So today I want to talk about Vaccine by Joe Miller. I listened to the audiobook, which I just finished recently. I wanted to discuss a few of the key points from it and share what I thought of this book. So this book is about a relatively small company that was relatively unknown called BioNTech, which was actually a company working on an innovative solution to try and cure cancer, really, using mRNA. But the two doctors you see on the cover, Uga and Özlem, who are actually a married couple as well, who set up the company, they had quite remarkable foresight when the pandemic, in the early stages of the pandemic, before it was officially a pandemic, they sort of identified the risks to the population of such a disease. And effectively, very rapidly, they converted the company from a company looking at cancer treatment to a vaccine company. They're still using the innovative mRNA technology that they were developing, but it's now to create a vaccine against Covid-19 rather than purely focused on cancer treatment. And this change is not only a remarkable shift in technology and focus, but it's also the fact that this treatment was incredibly innovative. It was new, it hadn't really been tested, and it certainly hadn't been tested in the vaccine or antivirus field of research. But with their determination, they were able to not only turn this company into a vaccine production and manufacturing company, joining up with Pfizer in the end to get global production, but they were actually able to do it in record time and be, I think they were, from my understanding, the first vaccine to actually come out, and it was an incredibly effective vaccine as well. So I just want to talk about some of the information, the pros of this book, and there's a con I want to come to as well, or maybe a couple of cons. One of the pros is that Joe Miller was able to write a relatively engaging story where he details it's quite a science-heavy book, I suppose, because it's talking about the immune system, it's talking about certain factors within the immune system, it's talking about technology and development of vaccines. So there's quite a lot of science built into that. But he does it with certain analogies which generally work, and they're able to break it down so you can understand how the different parts of the immune system work, how the different T cells, etc., work in general within the human body, and what BioNTech are trying to achieve with this technology. He also, covers off points around production issues, the sheer costs and scale required, and the risks involved. So he touches on the risks. I'll comment on the cons about the risks. The risks aren't overdeveloped because we're talking about what was effectively a successful vaccine that came out. You don't necessarily see the risk side of it in as much detail. He does try and cover it off, but the risk reward is enormous, and because they're successful, the rewards for the company and individuals is hugely successful, and for the world, because we've got one of several successful vaccines. But the risks are massive, and if it hadn't worked, then that company would no longer exist, and that's sort of the a cutting edge of pharmaceutical research. There is that risk. It requires huge amounts of investment. If it works, the payoff is huge. If it fails, the company no longer exists, and the people who work for it no longer have jobs. The other con, I might as well do the other con now as well, is that this can feel, because it's discussing really a singular company and the founders of this singular company, it can feel a bit like a promotional book on how incredible BioNTech are, and it can feel a bit of a sales pitch from that point of view. I think because it was successful, it does feel a bit like a sales pitch. So there is that side of it, and it can feel a bit, I suppose, one-sided would be a way of phrasing it, and it is one-sided because it is their view of their research and their technology. So it is one-sided in that sense, and can feel a bit promotional for the company. But putting that aside, he does cover off the science involved. He does cover off, in part, some of the political consequences and discussions that were taking place at the time. He does cover off some of the supply issues and the challenges that companies and the world faced with that, because it was immensely challenging. And also you start to see how the timeline unfolds, and how, the view of the world changes as, as the pandemic grows and spreads around the world, and more people are infected, and unfortunately more and more deaths. The urgency for a solution and for a vaccine grows and grows and grows, and the political pressure for that grows. But you also get a lot of focus on the two individuals and their determination to really try and stay out of the political agenda as much as possible, and focus on the research and the technology, but also do it at pace. And the pace is exceptional. The pace at which they brought out this new technology, this new vaccine, is unprecedented. And that's what's probably the most remarkable bit about this piece, to understand how they did that. It's an engaging read if you're interested to see, and it's obviously very recent memory, and we're still living with it. So it's very recent. As I say, there are a few cons with it. It doesn't really discuss the risk enough for me of what they took, and it also does feel a little bit promotional and sales pitchy for the company itself. But I think that's driven by the fact that it was a success. And it is one-sided. It's their company view of their vaccine, and you get a little bit about the other vaccines. AstraZeneca, who else? Moderna, and they're doing it in the background. They're doing everything in the background, but it is focused purely on this one company and their view of their process and how they got there as quickly as they could and as safely. And it's interesting because it's recent. It's interesting because it's a new technology, and it'll be fascinating to see whether that develops now into some form of cancer treatment, and whether they can convert back to that cancer research they were doing before. It's also their, I suppose, human stories of these two individuals. This married couple who led this company from a scientific perspective. They obviously had a board on there as well, but you get their viewpoints quite clearly. You get the view of some of the board members and people they dealt with, of how they were trying to develop this as quickly as possible, and not accepting the standard time lengths that we had, or that existed for these processes in the past, but actually saying, why can't we do it quicker? We need it. And this leads to my final point about, and I probably put it in the heading somewhere, this is necessity is the mother of invention. And it seems that humanity requires an imminent threat for us to really push the boundaries of what we can achieve and what we can do. And this is potentially another example of where we have, as a society, and individual companies within that, and individuals within that, have pushed the technology, have pushed our understanding, have pushed our processes to become more streamlined, to become more effective, to be quicker at adapting and bring out a new technology, this mRNA style vaccine, because we needed something. And it is that reliance on the necessity driving human innovation is still very present in today. And if the risk isn't imminent, is there the drive and the finances and resources to actually fix it swiftly? I will leave you that thought for today.